Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the 250 events in the life of Jesus. We are studying the New Testament or the New Testament Gospels in chronological order, and we're doing this, every day, just doing a video and posting it. And we're doing just a short section of Scripture every single day, so that way we have time to sit down, read the Scripture, and then go through it a little bit, and I provide some notes, and we have a little bit more detail. If you'd like to sign up for this study, we have a link in the description that you can click on and sign up. And so today we're still in the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount's Matthew 5, chapter 6 through, I'm sorry, 5 through 7. And we're about halfway through at this point. And today Jesus talks about money. And this can be a touchy subject because sometimes the church goes too far in talking about money, and then sometimes the church goes not far enough in talking about money. And so we're going to try to find that middle ground when it excuse me, when it comes to talking about money. And so Jesus starts off with Matthew 6 verse 19. He says, "Don't store up your treasures on earth," right? Meaning, don't try to collect and make sure all your treasure are on earth, where moths eat and rust destroys, and where thieves break in and steal. He says, "Store your treasures in heaven," right, where moth and rust cannot destroy, and thieves cannot break in or do not break in and steal. And he finishes that section with, "Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be." And some translations says, "Wherever your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And so we need to make sure, right, that we're not living for the wrong thing. And so verse 19, Jesus makes it clear that having the wrong treasures results in a heart that is in the wrong place. And we've all seen this, right? And this, as we've gone through this study, as we've looked at all of these different the beatitudes and then all the different things that Jesus has talked about here, it all goes back to a condition of the heart. All of it goes back to a condition of the heart. What starts in where it starts in the heart is what it's going to come out. And so whether it's lust or whether it's greed or whether it's adultery, those type of things, it all starts in the heart. And so Jesus is saying, look, if your greed and your stuff and your love of money, it starts in the heart, then it's going to cause all sorts of other kind of problems. And so he goes on into 22 and 23, and he uses a lamp and the eye as an example here. And he says that your eye is like a lamp that provides light for your body. It's a perfect example. Right? A light comes in through our eyes, and that's what allows us to see. The reflection of light off things is what allows us to see. And so he says, when your eye is unhealthy, your whole body is filled with darkness, right? If your eyes aren't working, then you're blind and you don't see anything. It's just black. It's complete and total darkness. And if the light you think you have is actually darkness, how deep that darkness is. And the thought there is if you think what you have coming into your eyes is light and it's actually darkness, just how blind. He's saying, how blind are you? Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm still trying to get over a little bit of this cold and junk that went around. And so when we get into these Jewish writings, right? A good eye back then in Jewish writings, a good eye represented a generous attitude, and a bad eye a stingy one, right? And so the bad eye results in a deep internal darkness, and we've seen this in people, and a moral, the morally blindness, and a good eye, obviously results in light and good things. And so we need to make sure we keep this attitude about money as we go along, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail. And so finally he finishes up in verse 24. He says, "No one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money." And that is so true. And I think we've all, if any of us have enough experience in this world, has seen a case or scenario where someone's tried to just, you know, they just had a love of money but wanted to try to serve God at the same time. We're going to see that with the rich young ruler, right? And so it's really hard to do both. And so Jesus is saying that you can only serve one master, and we know that we can only have one master in our life. You can't serve two. It's impossible. Anyone who's ever done it, you can't do it. And so we live in a very materialistic society. This society is all about money. I mean, everything you see, you get on your social media, it's about how you can make money, or it's about money here, or it's about how you can get this next best thing. And so we have a lot of people who their goal and their master is money. And we as Christians, that should not be the case, right? And so people will spend all of their lives just trying to collect things and store up money only to die and leave it all behind. And there's nothing wrong with some of that, right? We're going to look at that. All right. The desire for money and what it can buy far outweighs their commitment to God in spiritual matters. And so if your commitment to money is outweighs the commitment to God, then you're putting God second. And he's saying you can't do that. You can't serve me and actually do that. And so you're going to spend your time and you're going to spend your energy thinking about whatever you store up. So don't fall into this materialistic trap that we live in this society. It's easy to do. It's so easy to do. And so we've got to make sure that we don't do that, because the Bible does say that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And we see that in First Timothy 6:10. That's been taken out of context sometimes to say that money is the root of all evil. And that's not true. It's the love of money that is the root of all evil. And so what we see here, right, the problem that Jesus identifies is not money itself. There's nothing wrong with being rich, right? There's nothing wrong with being a multimillionaire. There's nothing wrong with not having a lot of money, right? There's nothing wrong in those scenarios. It's your heart and your condition with doing with the money that you have. I mean, you can have someone who is a multimillionaire who is less stingy and less in love with money than someone who makes $30,000 a year. And so it's about the condition of the heart. So it's about where your loyalties lie in this, and money is one of the big ones that we look at. And so we see here that being a disciple of Jesus requires complete devotion to God. And I got a couple other things I want to say this, because I want to go back to this thing that there's this idea now in society that if you're rich, then you must be evil, right? Then you've stolen money, or you've taken money from the poor, and that's why you're rich. And so look, there's some cases where there are people who are rich because they've done evil things. There's no doubt about that. But there are people out there who are very rich because they were just really good in business, and they had made really good investments, and they did that kind of stuff. And so we need to get rid of that narrative that all rich people are evil, right? Or just because someone's rich that they're evil or they're bad. That we need to get rid of that. Okay, like I said, someone could be poor, make just a little bit of money, and have a worse attitude and condition around money and the love of money than someone who is rich. Excuse me. And so I want to get that. The other thing too is the love of money causes us to do things we shouldn't do as Christians, right? It causes us to put God behind us. It can cause us to drop some of our morals. But the one thing I want to point out in this too is money has become not only a hindrance in our Christian walk or in Christianity, but it's also become a hindrance in the church. And this is what I mean by that. I've seen a lot of churches who they put money, right, up there as one of the most important things, and they're willing to allow things to happen that they shouldn't in order to make sure they don't lose that money, right? Well, this person gives a lot, so we're going to put up with their unchristian-like behavior in our church building or towards other people, or that because they give a lot, and we don't want to lose their money, right? Or they'll look around things or allow things to be done just because this person gives a lot of money, or they will make policy or make decisions based on, well, this person gives a lot of money, and so we're going to do things because, well, we don't want to lose their giving. If you ever consider that as a church leader, you probably need to step down. I'll put it that way at first. If that's your motive and that's why you do things, you do need to step down. But the thing here is we as a church cannot let the love of money that we bring in sway the way we act and function as a church, right? And I think that's one of the biggest problems we see in the churches, because we'll see so many times it's like, well, what would you consider a healthy church, or how would you consider your church healthy? And they'll say, oh, well, our giving's the best it's ever been. Well, what does that mean? Just because you've got a ton of money to coming in doesn't mean that you're a healthy church, right? You need to be looking at the spirituality aspect. So I say that because churches can get caught up in the amount of money they have coming in, or what that should never be. Honestly, and I personally believe this. I think sometimes elders shouldn't even know how much money's coming in and who gives it. I really don't, because I think that can sway them to make decisions or do things that they shouldn't do. And so we need to make sure that, as Christians in our personal lives, that we're not getting caught up in the love of money. And we also need to make sure that as the church that we're not getting caught up in the love of money, and that we're spending that money the way that we're called to, right? We're going to talk about this a little bit more later on, but that was one of the things that one of the reasons we looked at with why we do what we do at Simply Church is, we try to push to where almost everything we bring in goes to helping people, right? And we don't have paid staff, right? We have very little overhead, and we try to keep it that way as much as possible, so that way we can do with what we receive and give it to God, or I'm sorry, give it to people to help people, which we see a lot of in the New Testament. And so we've got to make sure that we're responsible with money as well when we do this. Now, I'm not saying there's anything against having, like, spending your money on salaries or spending your money on church buildings or anything like that. But it's just, if you put a priority on that, and that's where all your money's going, and it's not, and a good portion of your money's not going to helping people, then, and it's just collecting materialistic stuff as a church, then you need to take a look at that, and I'm not trying to be mean with that. You need to take a look at it and say, hey, where are our priorities, right? What are we focused on? Because I've been caught up in that. I mean, personally, I've been caught up in that, where it was all about doing this and getting stuff and building stuff, and it was a wrong focus, and I'm willing to admit that. And so we need to make sure as Christians that we don't get caught up in that kind of behavior as well. And so I want to just say all that. Now, I know these are some short verses, and this one's a little bit longer, but I just want to get into that because money is a sensitive topic. Money is a hard topic, and the harder, like, in our economy and the way we think, everything's driven by money, right? Our elections are driven by money. Our society is driven by money. Almost everything we do, when we look at it, is driven by money in some way. So we need to make sure that we're careful and we don't get caught up in that race, and that it doesn't take control over us, and that we focus on God, and we don't focus on trying to always have the best things, or always having the best house, or trying to bring in the most money I can bring in. Again, there's nothing wrong with working hard and making a lot of money. We just got to make sure that that is not what's the priority in our life, and that's not what we put one. If you're putting making money over serving God, then you need to look at that. And I'm not talking about, oh, well, I had to work on a Sunday, right? This is another thing, and I'll be quick with this one. It's like, well, if you work on Sundays, then you're not truly, committed to God. That's not. I don't believe that for a second. I've seen some people who couldn't hardly work on most Sundays, and some of the most devoted people to God. It's not about, your worship and your devotion to God doesn't have to do with just everything you do on Sunday. And that's another thing we got to make sure we get out of the back of our heads, is that just because someone goes to church every time the door opens, that makes them a good Christian. That those aren't things. Again, it's not bad to do that, but we got to get rid of that kind of mindset. So I know I've kind of gone a couple of different directions on this one, but it really ties everything together. Money, like so many things, is connected to money, and we just need to make sure that we do not get tied up in that kind of love of money, or that kind of devotion to money, to where we're willing to give up our moral standards, either as a people or as a church. Whether we should not, as in our personal lives, should not give up, moral standards, or cave to immoral things in our personal lives because of money. And just like the church should not put up with or allow or overlook things just because certain people give money, right? We need to make sure we don't get caught up in that as well. So again, I appreciate y'all for watching these and following along with them. I just really do appreciate it. We're getting a lot of good feedback, and I really do thank everyone. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please go ahead and do so. I hope that these are beneficial to you, that they help you see the insight into what Jesus was talking about with a lot of his teaching. And as always, I appreciate you for watching.